Executive Directive 14 and the teacher shortage. It seems that one of the most common things about the field of education that everybody knows is that it's difficult to find what states and school districts consider qualified teachers. This area, commonly referred to as the teacher shortage, is what I decided to focus this presentation on. So before we get into a bit of details about the problem itself, I wanted to watch this short video so that we can have a bit of context.
That labor shortage is hitting America's classrooms. The need for teachers is growing nationwide, and that's especially true in Detroit. Kate Rogers reports.
All right, how's everybody doing today?
Detroit native Donovan Gardner is following in his mother's footsteps as a special education teacher in Motor City.
Well, it was something that I knew I could wake up every day and do well.
But working in the city's public school district, which is 250 teachers short at this time, according to the Detroit Federation of Teachers, is challenging. Gardner is working with 25 special needs students each day.
I service students from 2nd grade all the way up to 8th grade. So I have a pretty huge caseload.
Detroit is also competing with other nearby districts for talent and is at a disadvantage due to its conditions and compensation.
If we can provide a competitive wage for our teachers, I think that will help to attract quality teachers, high quality teachers to our school district.
But the issue extends far beyond Motown. Each year, some 300,000 public school teachers are needed around the country, according to the American Federation of Teachers. But a shortage is intensifying nationwide.
If these trends continue, we'll basically be 100,000 teachers short for every year after 2025.
The AFT says the shortage is amplified in rural areas and in inner cities like Detroit. The types of teachers needed run the gamut from special education to history, science, math, and more. Part of the problem is funding for public schools as well as perception of the profession, but one major reason behind the shortage is compensation. Last year, the national average public school teacher salary was $60,000 a year, according to the AFT. Benefits do vary depending on location, level of education, and role. Salaries for teachers in Detroit range from $37,000 a year to $65,000 annually, according to the city's union, which is hopeful its new Board of Education will usher in change.
I think we're finally at the point right now where we can start talking about the turnaround. I surely hope that the issue with class size and the issue with the lack of teacher service is an issue of the past. And I look forward to working very hard with the current school district to alleviate this issue.
But despite the hurdles that come along with the job, back in the classroom, Gardner says the impact he's making is well worth it.
That's what's the most beneficial to me, the love I get from the kids and seeing them develop and actually teaching them.
For Nightly Business Report, I'm Kate Rogers, Detroit.
I chose to use this clip specifically because it's a news clip that looks at a problem that people in academia have focused on and a problem that people outside of academia realize that we have. The clip itself looks at teacher shortage in a specific area, Detroit, but it also notes that this is a nationwide problem that both urban and rural areas face. At this point, I don't feel like the video said anything that we as educators don't already know. The video also talks about why the community believes that there's a teacher shortage, and for them, it's simply put, teachers aren't being paid enough. I want you to keep that in mind, the community's perception of why the problem is what it is as we move through this presentation.
Good afternoon. I'm Richard Ingersoll, University of Pennsylvania. And as Kevin said, I've been doing research on teacher supply, demand, and quality issues really over the last 2.5 decades. And this afternoon, I'm going to briefly talk about what the data tell us about this big national crisis we have, teacher shortages, that we've heard so much about. The conventional wisdom is that we simply do not produce enough teachers in this country. Certainly not enough to keep up with student enrollment increases or teacher retirement increases, and that the outcome is that that many of our classrooms are not staffed with qualified teachers, particularly in our disadvantaged schools. The antidotes, the policy solution is straightforward. Let's bring thousands of more people into the teaching occupation. And we have dozens and dozens of interesting initiatives, federal, state, and local, designed to do that. The data tell us, however, unfortunately, that no matter how worthwhile these initiatives are, they will not solve the problem. The data tell us that the conventional wisdom is something of a wrong diagnosis and a wrong set of prescriptions. The data tell us that we don't have problems in the sense that we produce few teachers, teacher shortages. Rather, the data tell us that we lose too many teachers. We have a teacher turnover problem. And so hence, recruiting more teachers into the teaching occupation alone will not solve the problems. We also need to work on teacher retention.
So in 2016, as a part of AERA's Centennial Year programming, they created the Knowledge Forum as an opportunity for leading education scholars and policy leaders to engage in an open discussion on cutting-edge research on education and learning using Ed Talks. And this is an Ed Talk by Dr. Richard Ingersoll, who's a professor of education and sociology at the University of Pennsylvania. And I felt like I wanted to show that because it's kind of important to my topic, because it leads me back to the question that Dr. D'Amico always asks me when she's asking me anything pertaining to any topic I'm looking at. How do I know that my problem is actually a problem? The first video that we looked at before this, it addressed the what people outside of academia perceive to be the problem, right? But this video is kind of telling us that some people inside of academia look at it a bit differently, right? So I thought it was important to kind of set the stage, and I thought that it would be a bit more beneficial than just talking about the literature, which I will get into towards the latter part of the presentation. So Dr. Ingersoll, he's been in this area doing research in relationship to teacher supply and demand for over 20 years. And according to his data and the data from other scholars, what they're saying is that we're not producing enough teachers to keep up with enrollment and teacher retirement. Meaning students enrollment is increasing and teachers are leaving the classroom because they're retiring. And this is happening faster than colleges of education are producing teachers. So many classrooms, especially in disadvantaged areas, are not being staffed with qualified teachers. And so throughout the country, on a federal level and on a state level, and even on a local district level, simple policy solutions have been ones that seem to make common sense. Let's bring in more teachers into the workforce. And so because they're saying if it's a simple problem, we're just going to bring in more teachers into the workforce, most of the federal, state, and local initiatives have been designed to do that. So all of the factors that Ingersoll mentions, we already know. And when I look at the topic, the problem comes with his statement that no matter how worthwhile these programs are, they're not solving the problem, because the problem isn't that we're not producing enough teachers. The problem is teacher turnover. And therefore, just attempting to recruit teachers won't solve the problem. And this made me think about many of the policies that we already have that address teacher shortage. And it also made me think, why aren't the policies that we already have solving the problems? Do some of these policies work better than others? are these policies, and the policies that are working better than others, what exactly are they doing? So what exactly is the teacher shortage? The notion of the teacher shortage isn't new. If we want to conceptualize exactly what it is, for the purposes of my research, the teacher shortage is the lack of qualified teachers in a specific content area or grade level. It occurs when there aren't enough teacher applicants to meet the needs of schools. School districts and systems across the nation struggle to acquire and retain qualified teachers. When we look at defining the problem, simply put, the issue at hand is one of supply and demand. There are moderate to high need for specific types of teachers, but the teacher supply and the outlet used to train them are not able to keep up with the pace. I think putting this in an economic perspective kind of helps to shed light on the problem.
The Department of Education just released information that shows the types of educators in high demand and hard to find. Then your side's Nita Blanton's here to explain. Nita?
Tom and Nicole, I called around to several districts here in Hampton Roads to see how their hiring has been going over the summer. Most of them are confident. They're actually in good shape going into the new year. Only a few openings, but there are a few areas that are causing some concern locally and really statewide. Just take a look. Here's the Virginia Department of Education's new top 10 list of critical shortage teaching areas. You see special education is number 1. It's followed by elementary education for pre-K through 6th grade. As STEM programs become more prevalent and important for these schools, you notice career and technical educators are on there as well, and math teachers, especially for 6th through 12th grade too. Now, toward the end of the list are health and PE teachers for pre-K through 12, and history and social science teachers. All of that info came from an annual survey of school divisions, and here's how they came to that conclusion. They looked at the total number of teaching positions that are unfilled. They consider teaching positions that are filled by provisionally licensed teachers. They also gather data on positions that are filled by teachers who are licensed to teach, but who are teaching in academic subject areas other than their area of preparation. The Department of Education is required to report critical teaching shortage areas to the General Assembly every year. No one seemed to have a clear answer on why the subjects I mentioned have become so hard to fill. But if you have specific concerns that you'd like us to look into as the new school year begins, make sure you tell us. Send us an email to reportit@wavy.com. Anita Blanton, sit on your side.
The teacher shortage is a national issue because it impacts both urban and rural areas across the country. And since it's a national problem, we can look at it in pockets across the country. For me, I thought it would make sense to look at it in Virginia because it's where I live, and so it impacts my community. This specific video gives us a snapshot of the teacher shortage in Virginia, right? And one thing that I think that's really important that the video asks is the question of why are these subject areas so hard to fill? When looking at educational data over the last 3 decades, it can be determined that no matter the economic conditions of the country, school hiring practices, or budget cuts, the need for teachers is always timeless and universal. Teacher shortages occur when there aren't enough teacher applicants to meet the needs of schools. Like I said before, school districts and systems across the nation struggle to acquire and retain teachers. So when we look at the teacher shortage, it's not just about bringing new teachers in. It's also about keeping them in and keeping them until they are able to retire. So when we look at this map, we can see that the teacher shortage impacts California, Texas, New York, and Illinois in greater numbers, according to the United States Department of Education. About 75% of all states report having a teacher shortage during the 2016-17 school year. So as I said before, it's a national issue that can be looked at in smaller